Joe Waltz is a retired public school teacher and current civic volunteer who is a Democrat running for the 76th district seat in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. The 76th district has a population of just under 64,000 people and encompasses all of Clinton and parts of eastern and northern Center County. The Express Community newspaper is pleased to welcome Joe Waltz for an interview ahead of the November 3rd general election. Today's interview is being conducted by Lana Muffler, managing editor of the Express.
Good morning, Joe.
Lana, good morning.
Nice to have you here.
Good to see you.
Okay, we're going to ask a few questions here, so we'll get started with the first one. One of the leading local issues today is the integration of Lock Haven University with Bloomsburg and Mansfield universities. That could result in upward of 100 faculty and staff reductions, along with program reductions. Have you taken a position on the integration, and what are your views on this issue?
Yes, Lana, good question. Thank you. Let me go way back in time for a moment, please. I was the first person in my entire extended family to go to college, a good many years ago, as I said. And it was a hard decision. A lot of factors had to be factored into that decision. Number one, affordable, of course. Number two, did the college have my major? Number three, we have small classes. Number four, relatively close to home in case of an emergency. So I went to Mansfield State University after graduating from high school, and it pretty much encompassed all the things I was looking for, albeit I did have to take out a considerable amount of student loans. But nevertheless, it did match most of my criteria. I remember the small classes specifically. I had classes, Lana, that were, some cases, 8 students. Some classes, 20 students, a couple more, but mostly in my major, it was small classes. And I'll never forget the one thing that really, for whatever reason, just sticks in my mind. There was a group of about 5 or 6 of us that had a project due the next day. It was finals. And the professor, it was a graphics art professor, came up, and we're there probably about 11:30, just banging our heads off the wall to get all these things done in time. And he came in, he said, everybody just stop. Jump in a van. He took us up to Rochester, where he had a good friend who owned a little pizzeria, and he asked him to keep it open until we got there. So we had the best time. We come home, obviously, early the next morning. He said, forget everything. He said, I've seen you working. I know you're committed, on and on and on and on. And he graded us pretty much on what he had seen us doing up to that point. That isn't going to happen in large classes. And I'm going to use one more example. Let's assume you have a young person from Wingate, Snowshoe, Milesburg, and they have their heart set on going to college, a 4-year degree. And Lock Haven has their major. Lock Haven has small classes, has everything they need. Now, all of a sudden, this major is quite possibly moved to Mansfield or quite possibly moved to Bloomsburg. Now, as that student from Wingate, Milesburg, Snowshoe, who was staying home to save money, is he now going to say, uh-oh, I'm going to have to now live on campus at Bloomsburg or live on campus at Mansfield to fulfill my dream of getting a 4-year degree? No, he's not. And what's going to happen is that young man or that young woman is just not going to go to college. Lock Haven University is important to our district. I can't stress how important it is. The people that work there, both on staff as well as professors, as well as maintenance and so on and so forth, they keep our community vital. They keep it alive. They volunteer. They spend money in this area. They're our neighbors. They're our friends. They're important members of the greater Lock Haven and Clinton County society. Yes, I want this to work out. I would hope that they would give our current president, who I think has done a fantastic job, who took Lock Haven University from losing enrollment to turning around and now gaining enrollment. I wish they would give him the autonomy to continue doing that over the next couple of years. As everyone knows, this is a very unprecedented time we're in right now. This is a crazy time we're living through right now. I just feel that no decision should be made at this point in time. Let this pandemic work itself out to the best that it can. Give our president the autonomy to work on things even more so, and let's try to turn this around so that students in this area, students out of this area, can still have the choice of coming to Lock Haven University for a 4-year degree. Thank you, Lana.
You're welcome. Do you support more funding for Lock Haven University, which saw increased enrollment this fall, and our state-run schools in general?
Yes, I do. Back in the 60s, Lana, the state funded the school district at approximately 50%. In the 80s, I believe that law was changed, that today, currently, the state funds its school districts at approximately 38%, which is one of the worst levels in the country. And we're suffering. If you're living in a viable, strong economy area, you're going to make up that difference fairly easily through your tax base. You're going to have the best of facilities, you're going to have the best in equipment. But if you live in an area that doesn't have that vibrant economy, you can't afford, your people can't afford the property taxes, et cetera, and so on and so forth, to make up that difference that the state has relinquished. Yes, we do need to get back to 50% state level. There are a couple of things, if I may go on, Lana, there are a couple of proposals that I'm aware of. I'm not sure where they're at right now. They may be languishing, they may be currently being worked on. One, may I delve into property tax at all to answer this question? Okay. As far as property tax is concerned, a quick story. I believe this happened in Monroe County. Please don't quote me on that, but I read this a few years ago. And there was an elderly woman who wrote a letter, her state representative at the time, and the letter said that she was having to make a decision between paying her property taxes or buying clothes and food. Now, she went on to say, Lana, and this is what really breaks my heart, she went on to say, I guess I'm just guilty of living too long. That's heartbreaking. No one in Pennsylvania, elderly or otherwise, should have to think they've lived too long because they cannot afford to pay their property taxes. Now, back to what I was saying, there was a proposal to eliminate property taxes altogether, which you have to consider this. It would mean raising the personal income tax approximately 2%. It would mean raising sales tax approximately 1%, as well as taxing a lot more items. So consider that. It would also mean that your big stores, your big box stores in the area would also get out of paying property tax. So now there's an even bigger hole that we're digging ourselves in. We're now going to have to try to get out of that hole by paying that excessive personal income tax, paying that excessive sales tax, and as I said, as well as on more items. There's another proposal that I would like to investigate further, and it's a bipartisan issue from the last thing I read. And that is to give a property tax rebate of up to, I think, again, approximately a $2,000 range, which means if your property tax is $2,000 or less, you pay nothing. If it's more than $2,000, you simply pay the difference. Now, how could that be funded? That's going to be the next question, of course. Again, a couple of ways. One, I would like to see Pennsylvania lower its corporate income tax rate, which currently is one of the highest in the nation, I admit that. I'd like to see them lower that income tax rate by 2%, close the Delaware loophole, and bring those corporations, 79%, I believe, 78% of corporations that do business, operate in the state of Pennsylvania, do not pay a corporate income tax in Pennsylvania, simply because they are registered in Delaware. That would bring, give or take, $330, $40 billion in new revenue. One other possibility is to, if everybody look at my notes very quickly, 1 second, is to take the personal income tax rate, which is right now, I believe, 3.07%, and divide that into two. One would be tax on wages. That's what every one of us in this room, that's what probably all of our friends, almost everyone we know, pays. Lower that to 2.8%. Take the income tax on wealth, which would be like your dividends, it would be royalties, it would be estate tax, it would be capital gains, things such as that, and raise that to 6%, a little over 6%. That alone would bring in close to $2 billion to the state of Pennsylvania in new revenue. I just feel, Lana, that you and I pay taxes, our friends pay taxes, small businesses in this area pay taxes, farmers pay taxes. I just feel it's time for large corporations to start paying their taxes as well. Take the weight off of our shoulders. Thank you. Sorry if I rambled. Good question.
Have you talked to any LHU officials to ask what the college's needs are?
I've spoken to a couple people. In fact, I'll expand that, Lana. I've also spoken to the gentleman who is in charge of the regional APSCUF as well as the AFSCME unions to find out what it is they need. I've talked to numerous professors just most recently yesterday morning via texting. And yeah, it basically boils down to the fact that they need funding from the state. The state, once again, and I know that that's a cliche of an answer, but it's truthful nevertheless, the state needs to start funding its state universities. Thank you.
Do you support competitive state grants to organizations and institutions for betterment projects as means of providing taxpayers with a return on their state tax dollars?
I certainly do, and you certainly encapsulated it. As I said earlier, as you just said now, we all pay taxes. If we don't get those grants, they are grants, and by the very nature of being called a grant, they're there. Our taxes are paying for these grants, and if we aren't competitive, if we don't apply for these grants, someone else is going to get them. If we don't apply, it doesn't mean they're just going to vanish into thin air. Someone else, Lackawanna County, Tioga County, pick a county, they're going to get, or pick a district in my case, they're going to get those grants. Yes, and considering the fact that there are grants for nearly everything out there, we've got grants for everything from small businesses to farmers, incentives and grants, to pretty much anything you can name right now, Lana. Water, sewer systems that are outdated, need fix, are grants out there. And just as an aside, for the last 3-4 months, Lana, but it seems like it was just 2 days, but for the last 3 or 4 months, I've been going to various municipal meetings and borough council meetings. I've gone from Avis to Snowshoe. I've gone from Aaronsburg to Renovo, meeting people, talking to people, and it seems that the one word that is in common with all of those places I've gone to has been the word grants. They need a grant for this. They're going to apply for a grant for that. They're there. We need to apply for them. Yes, they're competitive. I don't expect, if I'm fortunate enough to win this election, I'll get every grant I apply for, but I guarantee you I will search out grants for people and do my best. Thank you.
Clinton County is seeing stagnant and in some cases decreasing population. What would you do to attract more people here, especially now amid this work at home trend? Okay,
now you're in my wheelhouse. Thank you. We are losing a good number of our young people, brain drain if you want to call it that. And we do need to bring people into this area. I absolutely guarantee. We, in this area, the 76th district, we have everything that an outdoor enthusiast could ever want. We have mountains, we have rivers, we have forests, we have streams, we have every activity. We have hunting, we have fishing, we have kayaking, we have swimming, we have camping, and I could go on and on and on till the cows come home. We need to grab a bigger chunk of the outdoor tourism industry. And I say that, Lana, for a couple of reasons. Obviously, we have everything an outdoor enthusiast could want, but Penn State just recently completed a study, and by recent, I probably mean within the last 4, 5, 6 months possibly, and it found that people want to recreate within a day or two's drive of their home, and they want outdoor recreation. We here in central Pennsylvania, we have probably 2 million acres of public land. I think here in the 76, we have almost 500,000 acres of public lands. As I said earlier, that would appeal to everybody that wants outdoor recreation. We are within approximately a quarter of the nation's population. Baltimore, Philadelphia, Washington, New York City, and Boston, and on and on and on. We need to bring those people to this area. To do that, we have to improve our infrastructure, number one. Number two, that would include high-speed internet access, so that all these businesses I'm thinking of could market themselves. And number three, we need to cut some of the red tape, Lana, that would allow small businesses to get off the ground. I'm thinking like a boutique hotel, coffee houses, little tiny restaurants, microbreweries, for example. Something that's not going to get people only to come here for a weekend to go hiking or biking or trail riding, whatever, but get them to come here for a week, get them to come here for 2 weeks. And then when they go home, they realize, hey, I have access to high-speed internet. I'm going to bring my laptop next year, and I'm going to spend a month, and I'm going to work from a cabin, or I'm going to work from a small motel in this area. That's what I think we need to do, Lynn. I think we have everything that's needed. I often come across, again, if I'm rambling, tell me, but often I come across the bridge from our house on the other side of the river, and I look up the river towards the university with the sun setting, and it's just stunning. It's gorgeous. And I think how many people would give their eye tooth to be able to see that beauty each and every day. And we live in the midst of it. We need to bring people here to let them experience all the things that we experience day in and day out. Thank you.
One of the most compelling attributes of our area is the wealth of natural resources and beauty. What would you do to encourage economic growth while protecting the environment for future generations?
Pretty much exactly what I just said, Lana. When I was a child, I grew up on a farm, which I'm sure most of you know. Every available minute I could, I was out in the woods or I was in the streams around my farmhouse. And my fondest memories still are of those times, some of my fondest memories. I certainly want our future generations to be able to enjoy those same things that I did, to be able to enjoy those same pristine forests, to enjoy those same sparkling clean waters, and all the things associated with that. Yes, we need to protect it, and of course, by protecting it, that is what is going to allow us to bring people in to enjoy those things as well. Again, I don't want to ramble because I more or less answered that question a minute ago, Rolanda, so I'll let you move on.
In the age of the Amazon, not only is Main Street suffering throughout our rural towns, but now too our malls are closing. As local commerce struggles, what steps would you take to bring life back to our empty storefronts?
Well, I'll start out with malls first, and I'll segue to storefronts. I've always thought this. In fact, probably 10, 15 years ago, I thought, wouldn't it be great if a mall could transition into doctor's offices, transition into homes for senior citizens where everything could be there. You would have food, you would have recreation, you could possibly even have a movie, a theater. Everything that a senior citizen could enjoy, it would be on one floor. You wouldn't have to contend with the steps. That's always been a thought that's been in the back of my mind, and if obviously if I had a whole lot more money than I do, I would certainly invest in something like that, but as of right now, that's just a pipe dream. As far as our local storefronts are closed, it is heartbreaking to drive through any small town in this area and see storefronts that are boarded up and the lights are turned off. Go back to what you asked a little bit earlier, Lana. That's where governmental grants come in. Get those grants, cut that red tape so people can start a small business and not be encumbered with high cost for the biggest part of the rest of their lives. Again, that goes to what I said earlier. You need to find where these grants are. You need to talk to the people. Let me back up. First thing, you need to talk to the people. You need to have your office open to everybody, and when someone comes in with a dream of opening a small business, whatever it may be, you would say to that person, I love that. I love that idea. Let me try to help you. Let me try to cut through the red tape for you. Let me try to find you a grant that can assist you in opening up that business. I feel, and I'm not sure this is something that a lot of people are going to agree with, but ever since I was in school, Lana, I've always believed that government's prime role, state or federal, pick one, is to help people. I think that's what its role is to do, is to help people in any way they can. And if that help comes in the form of grants, so be it.
What other local issues are near and dear to you?
Oh my gosh. Well, we covered a lot of them: jobs and the economy, fair and equitable education, emphasis on the quality and emphasis on the equitable, and high-speed internet access. I think, Lana, that it's an essential. I was talking to a group the other night, and now, of course, I don't remember this, not quite that old, but I think it was in the 1930s, early 40s, there was a governmental program called the REA, the Rural Electrification Act, that brought electricity to those farmhouses in the rural areas here in Pennsylvania. As well, it was a federal grant as well as across the country. I think high-speed internet is a utility the same as is electricity, same as is water. It needs to be treated as utility. I would like to see the government, state or federal, form a partnership, create incentives, work hand in hand with your private companies, cable providers, TV, telephone companies, to run those cables, to run that, I call it the last mile from that telephone pole along the highway up that dirt road to a quarter mile to the farmhouse. It needs to be done. We need to have, especially now with what we're going through Atlanta, our young people need to do their schoolwork from home. They need to research from home. Sadly, our university students need to do the same. Our seniors could access telemedicine, saving them a lot of time and saving them a lot of money. And of course, our small businesses, as I mentioned earlier, could now market themselves not just locally, they can market themselves statewide, they can market themselves nationwide, and who knows, maybe someday they can market themselves worldwide.
I think we just had something in the paper this last week about CEDACOG getting a grant to help some areas of Clinton County, some areas of Lycoming County get some of this help. So I think, maybe that's on the right track.
I agree, Lana. Thank you for saying that. I always go back to infrastructure, and people primarily think of bridges and roads, which I don't blame them. I do as well. But I think a big part of infrastructure today is broadband for every single family in the state of Pennsylvania. I read an interesting article again recently that as of now, currently, there's not a single county in this state that over half the population has access to high-speed internet. And today's day and time, that's terrible. That needs to be fixed.
All right, now we're going to switch gears again. We're going to go to some COVID-related questions.
Okay.
Do you practice safety protocols to protect others and yourself from COVID?
I do. It's a common sense issue. It's a human issue. I know, Lana, that you wear a mask to protect the people around you. I do the same thing to protect the people around me. My wife and I, we built a house just a couple of years ago, and we moved our parents into a small apartment. It's attached to our garage. They are in their late 80s, early 90s. And wherever we go, the first thing that's through our mind, we have to protect others. But I hope they are also protecting us so that we don't take that virus home and give it to the elderly, give it, in this case specifically, my wife's parents. Yes, I don't understand, Lana, why this even has become a political issue. It's a human care health issue. I was always taught by my parents to listen to people smarter than me. That's why I went to school, that's why I went to college, and that's why I still try to seek out people that know a lot more than I do for information. I believe the scientists, I believe the medical personnel, and I believe that wearing a mask is one of the best ways currently to mitigate the circumstance that we're in. Obviously, I have no way I can prove this, Lana, but I have to believe that if everyone in this country had listened to the professionals early on, 5-6 months ago, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in right now. We would be able to have all children in school. We would be able to attend athletic events, as many people that wanted to attend these athletic events. Our restaurants and our small businesses downtown could be filled to capacity. And I will also, look, I'll ask, just to add one thing, Lana. I don't think that anyone in a leadership position in this country has made a decision that didn't encompass the health and welfare of the people first and foremost. Mistakes have been made. Sure, they've been made, but in hindsight, you can realize that some mistakes have been made. I was talking to a group the other night in Center County, and I told them the story. I said, because I've had to do this, you order a complex piece of furniture, and it arrives on your doorstep, but you have to put it together. And there's no set of directions. So you're working on it blindly, and then all of a sudden you say, boy, I wish I had done this an hour and a half ago. It would make this part I'm working on right now a lot easier. That's how this COVID, it's so unprecedented, it's so new that we are honestly learning on the fly. Thank you.
76th district incumbent posted, "We will not comply," on her social media page when Governor Wolf issued restrictions on businesses and organizations to slow the spread of COVID. And you supported impeachment of the governor due to this. I don't think that's right. And she supported impeachment of the governor due to this restriction. What's your reaction to that?
Lana, I'm going to take a pass on that. I'll tell you why. When I first made this decision to run, my wife and I, we talked about it, we discussed it, we lost sleep over it for many months. When the decision was finally made to do so, the next thing we sat down and we made a list of people that we'd love to have on our committee. And I must add, I have a wonderful, unbelievably terrific committee. But the first time I met with them, I said to them, I am not a negative kind of person. I said, I think hopefully if you ask anybody that knows me, they'll say Joe's pretty positive, has a good sense of humor, but is not negative. And I said, I can't be what I'm not. I cannot run a negative campaign. I am not going to talk about my opponent. I'm going to talk about me. Now, this may not make sense to you, but it made sense to me. But I said to him, I'm not running against my opponent. I'm running for state representative. I want to talk about what I can do, what my vision is, what I would like to, how I would like to see the betterment of people in the 76th district. So I would no more want to speak for my opponent as I would want her to speak for me. Sorry.
The next question, do you agree or disagree with your opponent regarding her vote to impeach the governor?
I'll do the same.
Same thing? Okay.
What's that called in cards? I'll take, or in golf, excuse me. I can't think of the terminology. Anyhow, whatever that is, I'm going to take that.
Okay.
And I'll just go back to my previous answer that her decisions are made by her. Hopefully, when I'm in office, my decisions will be made by me.
Do you support mail-in ballots for those who fear COVID and prefer not to vote in person?
I do. My wife and I voted by mail-in ballot for the primary, and on this is Tuesday, last Thursday, my wife and I handed in our mail-in ballots down next to the Piper building. Yes, I do support it. I'll go on record as saying if you don't want to use a mail-in ballot, don't. It's your freedom, it's your choice. But if you do fear for your safety or for whatever other reason and you feel a mail-in ballot is your best alternative, then do so. Lana, as you all know, it's been here. We've used absentee ballots, which is the same thing for years and years and years. A mail-in ballot is no different other than the fact that now it's becoming more commonly used. I like the idea of a mail-in ballot. I like the idea of getting as many people to vote as we possibly can. To me, that's the idea of making our democracy strong. Getting as many people to vote as possible, and that's another direction I could go a little bit later. We have a good friend, my wife and I have a good friend who was in her mid-90s, and all along she kept telling us she was going to use her mail-in ballot. Then, with all the chaos and confusion that's coming from certain parts of our country, she became concerned that her ballot may not count. For whatever reason, it won't be received in time. And she had a myriad of other excuses. So here's a woman who's in her mid-90s, who would be susceptible to the COVID virus, quite susceptible, yet she's so concerned that now she is going to vote in person. I just feel, back to what I said earlier, this should not be a political issue. She should not have had to decide, okay, I'm scared, I'm going to vote in person. I'll go back to what I said, Lana. If you feel it's best to vote in person, best for you, so be it. If you feel it's best to vote with a mail-in ballot, so be it.
Pennsylvania, like most states, is facing a massive budget deficit due to the economic and job downturn caused by COVID. How will or would you approach voting on new or increased funding streams to balance the budget as required in Pennsylvania?
Okay. That would go back to what I said earlier. There are so many avenues, I think I mentioned 2 or 3 earlier in this discussion, that we could explore to bring new streams of revenue into this state. So if I could just hearken back to my answer earlier, I would do so.
Okay, in closing, this will be the last one. Why should people vote for you?
Oh, wow. Probably a couple of things, Lana. I think, and this is one of the nice things about my age, I have had the opportunity to experience just about everything in life that any person in the 76th district has experienced, will experience, or is currently experiencing. Everything from having to take out a lot of school loans, having difficulty making ends meet, being married to my wife who was a small business owner, having experience in the classroom. And of course, experience of being a senior citizen. I say that proudly. I feel I earned every one of these white hairs to the top of my head. I have so much in common with the people in the 76. And I want them to know that when I go to Harrisburg, those commonalities, those things that we have in common are going to be first and forefront in my mind. I guess that's the main reason. I've had a lot of people over the past quite a few months have just said, if you're elected, will you listen to us? That, I think, is the role of a representative. As I said earlier, it's to help, and to help, you need to listen. And I don't want to get on my soapbox, but since it is the last question, I'll go out with a bang. I said this again many times. I will listen to everyone. If you send me an email, if you call my office, if you walk into my office, you're a constituent. The moment I open that email, the moment I close the door, the moment I pick up the phone, you're a constituent. I don't care if you voted for me, if you didn't. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, or other, man, woman, blue collar, white collar, no collar. I don't care. You are a constituent. And I'm hoping that at the end of that discussion, we can at least come to some kind of an understanding that would allow us to currently bump elbows and hopefully soon in the future to shake hands and leave one another with a mutual respect.
Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No. Other than thank you. I enjoyed this. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk, to speak. I wish I could go on, but I can't. So I had a good time. Thank you, one and all.